one thing that seems to be pretty clear about what human beings do, just in general, is almost permanently bending probability in our favor. It's as if talent and skill, even charm, charisma, are things that don't guarantee certain things, but they certainly help. Because we can prepare, and we do prepare. You can train, you can learn, but before things are actually etched into time and registered as events, there's almost like this veil of what can probably be called uncertainty. There isn't a guarantee, of course, even with the most simple things. It's like you train and train and practice, but then there's the game itself. And our efforts bend probability. And it's weird that the veil is always there, and sometimes it's a little more transparent. Sometimes it's completely walled off, like you can't see through it at all. And it's very uncertain. But a lot of the time, too, we're not just like drones, mindlessly preparing and training just to see things through. We actually enjoy what we're doing. In fact, I think that's most commonly the case, especially this day and age. Like, we aim to enjoy what we're doing. It's like an important part of bending the odds. And there's always this feeling, like that nervous kind of feeling, like your mix of excitement and fear. And the more you've trained and the more you've prepared, the more probability is in your favor, but the more pressure you now have sitting on you and within you. Because you don't want it to all be for naught. You don't want it to result in what might be considered complete and utter failure. And, I always tend to think of sports, and this thing is pretty precise. Like, it's pretty precise. Like, if you think about basketball, the closer you are to the hoop, the basket, the more likely it is your shots will go in. And certainly if you're a seasoned basketball player, each shot has a higher chance of going in versus somebody who has never played. But the further you get from the basket, the more unlikely you are to make a shot. Your percentage starts to go down. And each shot that leaves your hand is uncertain. None of them are guaranteed. That's completely obvious, but the training matters, obviously, as well. And it's the same thing that can be applied to any situation, like even shooting with a rifle. And some people are naturals. Some people get into something and take right to it. And some people just smash right through that threshold, right through that veil, over and over and over, to where the veil doesn't even really matter. If anything, the veil is exciting. It's not scary. And that's about as close to certainty as you're going to get. Because the universe simply functions that way. It is an important part of the scheme. Because imagine hypothetically if you were just this human agent, this human being who literally learned nothing, was unable to retain information, and you were out here existing. Imagine how low the odds would be if from each experience that you went through, you picked up no new skills or you derived nothing from it. And for each iteration of this thing or that thing, there was no increased chances of success. But that's not how it is. And imagine it the other way. If you had full retention and from one single time, from one iteration, you learned everything that you needed to learn. And you went from being a complete rookie to a grandmaster through one trip. And that's almost like it's too much. That's almost like we would learn too fast and it's too quick. So there's this middle ground. And there's this variation between people where it's almost like speciality, but it's not on purpose. It's something you actually have to find out. Like you discover this thing. Like you don't just know it, You accidentally stumble on this or that and you're like, wow, I really like this. And you keep doing it. And you keep doing it and doing it until you're a master. Ideally, I mean, it's like starting a fire, even something as simple as that. What are the odds somebody would start a fire if the only time they've ever seen fires from a lightning strike? They didn't know that you needed relatively dry material, you needed a spark, you needed something to contain the fire, something to make it burn. How long would that take? And then you have that against a survivalist, like an expert in survival. What are the odds that they'll start a fire? And then, once you understand that the survivalist is basically guaranteed to start a fire, you start putting time constraints on it. You say, like, what are the odds he'll start a fire within an hour? Or within 10 minutes, just to finely tune that probability to make it better and better and better. And we kind of do that. Actually, we definitely do that. Once it's known, once it's clear that you're dealing with a group of people or an individual that's completely capable of learning this or that, you start putting time constraints on it to improve it. You run faster and faster. You take the test faster and faster. It increases the ability not only to learn, but it teaches you how to learn in a weird way, even though the basics for it are already there. And then you're sort of walking around like I really believe that somewhere in your 30s, you start to take on the characteristics and features of a human being who has some mastery over human existence. Because up until that point, the veil is very, very potent. You can't see through it. And some people, man, like they're completely defeated by the veil. The fact of its very existence is too much to even try. Like how it's a tragedy, But it's always there. You're never going to get around it. Even the best of us contend with this little blip of uncertainty. Because that's the thing too. We can conceive so many directions, so many possible directions we can go in, so much potential. Like sometimes I joke, like you can hypothetically dive through the nearest window. I mean, you could do that. That's an option. But you're not going to because it doesn't fit with what you have in mind. But it's available, And the one thing that is actually done is the thing that is registered and etched into time. And that's the difference. There is infinite potential, there is infinite directions, but there's only one thing that is etched. And once it's etched, it is stored in reality, in the universe, in real time. This event that is registered is stored nowhere else but here. So, right now, presently on Earth, everywhere around us and all over, all that has been is currently stored in what currently is. And the evidence of what has been is evident upon investigation. And from that you can infer what will be, because there's a sort of momentum to it. And there are things that are so common you can think of them as laws, but they're patterns, cyclical. And we spend a lot of time doing this, and it wasn't even until recently, like relatively recently, that we started storing our findings in centralized places where other people could pick up your work and digest it. You know, somebody's 40 or 50 years worth of work condensed into a few books that somebody else later on reads and, you know, digests it in a short period of time and then begins to add to it and then stores it in the same place. And that has, like, seriously improved our ability to just continue a momentum. And the aim, too, or at least part of the aim of a civilization, is to increase the probability of so many things as much as possible, so as to basically guarantee them. You know, like guaranteed safety, guaranteed food, guaranteed housing, guaranteed rights, guaranteed everything. And we also have that other saying, you know, nothing is guaranteed. So it's kind of a conflicting thing that we're constantly trying to improve the odds that we will indeed consume food on a day-to-day basis. And the odds of that are pretty high, depending on where you're at. And the odds are so high that you don't really need to do much to continuously improve those odds. So your efforts can be put elsewhere, and sometimes increasing the odds of one thing increases the odds of another thing. Actually, pretty much all the time that's happening. And a clever person can see the sort of runoff effects of what they're doing and how it will potentially lead to other areas that have also had their potential raised. So if you basically become a master of one thing, there are peripheral things that have, you know, maybe halfway or 25-30% higher than other things that are also raised because of this one thing and what it took for this one thing to become mastered by you. But somebody who breaks through that veil over and over again is pretty revered. And the larger the stage, you know, the more revered they are, and for good reason. Because it's sort of a spectacle, in a way, to bend those odds like that. And it's fascinating as a human being to see. That's why we love sports so much. It's like the odds are so low of some events, of some series of events happening, that when they do, it just rips this feeling of just utter sublime adulation for what happened, you know? And it's so gripping and dramatic. And we won't forget those moments, you know, especially, as I've said in the past, when it's typified by a story. Because part of a story finding its edge is through a whole lot of preparation and probability bending and managing to walk through the veil. Those two things are very important, and they are completely linked because it requires both for a true monumental etching into time. And if you don't get through the veil, it's a cautionary tale. People will review what you did and where you went wrong and try to avoid it. And there's always going to be a host of things. you can point at. But we are so good at this as human beings. And I really think the centralized creator of this universe intentionally nerfed us. I think we're in this sweet spot where the future and forecasting, it's available, it's there. We can get a little whiff of the future. We know just enough, but it is completely uncertain. And hypothetically, let's say you knew everything. Take it to the other extreme. Say you knew the position of everything at all times. You knew every characteristic of everything. Would you be able to completely quell uncertainty? Would you completely remove the veil? Because the problem with that is other human beings. The problem is human beings, no matter their momentum, no matter where we've been, no matter what we've done, we still act spontaneously. And that is the veil for something that knows everything. That is the exact situation that God is in. God put a free will into human beings. And it's one of our most redeeming characteristics that we have a free will. We live in a universe that is so veil-free to this entity that made it, who knows everything all about it, knows everything all about us, but we still act spontaneously in a way worthy of jealousy and judgment, criticism, punishment, because it's us. And even if I knew everything, if you knew everything, you still don't quite know exactly what I'm going to say next. Even if we're on a certain topic of conversation that has a certain momentum in a certain direction, you don't know what I'm going to say. Even if you knew the full body of language that I've uttered before, you still don't know. But it's not the same for things other than human. Those things have a more veilless, more predictable way of existing. Objects. And that's fine. That's not a judgment, that's just an observation. That's the way it seems to be. And you know something, irony. Irony is one of my favorite things. Because irony is a complete inversion of probability and the veil. It is the firefighter whose house burns down. It's a guy or a gal who knows everything about fire and how to prevent fires. And their house burns down? Of all people, how ironic. It's a complete reversal of this whole thing for a moment. And the veil does something strange, you know, and not only causes a loss, but a very specific loss, you know, almost like a cosmic joke in a way. But there it is. And the human will peels little shavings off of determinism. There's these small little giveaways that human life is not determined. The mistake of people who have thought about determinism are equating the activity of objects in the natural world to human behavior. And, of course, there's a lot of predictability in what people do. Oh yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of different things that you could point to. And sometimes you can easily predict what somebody's going to say. But that's not a matter of determination. Sometimes that's a matter of intelligence. The smaller your vocabulary, the less you can say. And you can watch somebody speak who never says a new thing. Never. because there are different types of humans. There aren't, not all humans are here to say something new. Not all humans are here to think about the world. And that's fine. We need you too. We need everybody. Because for me, as somebody who lives a pretty non-dramatic life, like there isn't much overt dramatics in my world, So somebody who is dramatic, to me, is one of the most fascinating things. Because it's almost like an alien world, And the motivations for some of the decisions and things said to me are just captivating. It's interesting to me. And it's strange too, because we never quite classify it as I'm doing this to bend probability. Sometimes it's a feeling, because I used to put this down as something less than it actually is, but feeling, it seems to be, especially if it has elements of wisdom and intelligence in there. Feeling is this combined sum. It's the totality of what we know in conjunction with what we're seeing, what we're experiencing. So I think there's more feelings that we experience that are similar, and maybe we mistake them for other things sometimes. But I think there's a whole lot of shades there, and I think a lot of the time feeling can be more intelligent than rationale. But feeling and rationale together is a very potent thing, because they seem like opposites, as like all things do, but they go very well together. Because sometimes you just don't have time to think things out. And once you're beyond the veil, you have to rely on this preparation or training, the stuff you've learned, to not think and just do, And that's what they say in sports. A lot of the time it's psychological. It's in the mind. And then this is some crazy. Sometimes it really is, how bad do you want it? Because when there's nothing else left, when you've all trained just as hard, when you're all beyond the veil, that's what's left. And there's more there than one may initially think. Because there's more geography there, there's more energy to expel and use for this thing there. And you can just see like a little extra something that happens when somebody really wants something. Like that they'll kind of go above and beyond in a way. At least that's how it seems to manifest. Like it just looks a little different. And this can apply to a lot of things. Like I've heard some pretty crazy stories about people who really wanted something, who ended up doing things that just seemed outside of normal probability bending. And, sometimes just wanting something bad enough is endearing, because it really means that you've bought in. Detachment is a valuable thing. It's an important thing that you're going to need, but so is attachment. And, it's the synergy of both, isn't it? It always is. And I have a certain admiration for people who are willing to be so attached. To care so much about something that I could never even dream of caring about. And these are the things that I kind of think about sometimes, like, why? Why do you care so much? And I can't help but think that human beings are like little nerve endings in a body. There's just so many of us that of course there's eventually going to be somebody who cares about this much. But once something is registered and it's stored, it is reality. And this is why I have a problem with things like time travel. I think time travel is a very low probability situation. I don't think that there is much that we could do to increase the odds of traveling through time. Because the main issue is if reality is stored here, then where do you travel to? I know this is off subject, but it's something I was thinking about recently. If you have like a hard drive, you're able to move through different places in a video game because the storage of that world is in the hard drive. It's there. And just like in the natural world, reality itself, all that has been and all that will be, is stored here. And the future, to go to the future, would require basically a replica of this world stored somewhere else somehow. And you would have to be able to go to that. Same with the past. Like, there would have to be a replica or some place where this is stored to go to, if that makes sense. So I think something like time travel is it's something about how our minds work that makes something like time travel as a theoretical possibility. Because we are the time binders. And it's a hugely advantageous thing to be able to bind time like that. Because, I mean, even in the world of entertainment, it even makes something that's of value, like movies about time travel, or even talking about time travel has its advantages, but yeah. And it's funny too, like, certain things very directly increase the odds of this or that, and then certain other things very directly decrease the odds of this or that. And sometimes while you're doing things to increase the odds here, you're very directly decreasing the odds there. For some things, there is only one veil that you can go through, and you're sacrificing all other veils simultaneously. So, in order for you to make that breach, you really have to know, or at least feel, that you're doing the right thing. And that's really sort of goes with the infinite directions thing. Like, even with a relationship, a true relationship involves a person who is breaching this veil, but you're also not breaching any other veils. And to know an individual is a very specific thing. To know an individual fully is to give up knowing other individuals, at least partially. And I think that's even part of why it's romantic in a way, or desired to have that situation come about. Because even if you know everything that there is to know about somebody, for each day that passes, there are new things to know. And it's a never-ending endeavor to know somebody. And it's certainly true in dating or the romantic world that you could consider all that we do probability bending on that front. What you learn, the job that you do, the amount of money you make, who you are as a human being, the combined sum of you is the avatar for your romantic energies. And things like charm, charisma, even intelligence, all bend probability. It's like I've said, there are some people who are almost universally likable, and some people who are almost universally unlikable. And with those two states come certain probabilities. But there are no guarantees. That is for certain. And I've been through many different stages of dating. And my world has been sculpted by successful marriages. And I guess you could sort of apply some amount of magical thinking on that front. And really, if something does happen, you could say that it always was going to happen. It had 100% chance. Technically, I mean, you could say that. You could say it was never going to be anything else. But up until that point, up until you walk through the veil, that's just a feeling. Because the preparation is part A, the veil is part B, and the whole process as one is this third thing, which is an event. Whether successful or unsuccessful, which immediately branches out into other events. The coming together of two people, and the love therein very often results in the creation of new people and a whole host of other phenomena. And let me ask you this. What are the odds that you are the sort of person who improves their surroundings wherever they go? What are the chances of that? What are the chances you're the sort of person who brings down or does the opposite of improve the surroundings wherever you go? And some people always or mostly do either. And what's the operating function there? Is it their philosophy, their view of the world? Is it their attitude? Is it what they do know or what they don't know? It is certainly the case, though, that there are people who can't help but constantly improve the people around them just by their very existence, which is an interesting thing. And there is such a thing as morality, and as far as I go, as far as I think about it, the whole definition of a moral endeavor is to prepare yourself. Prepare yourself for this thing that you want to do that makes your surroundings better. And when you walk through the veil after the result of that preparation, it's more of a burst. It's a slow movement and then a burst. And it just completely depends on your aim. You know. I mean, that seems to be completely what morality is. And if you have a certain aim in mind, those small decisions that you make and those small things that you say will all fit the contours of that aim. And your preparation will fit the contours of that aim. And once you get to the point where that aim is about to take fire and you walk through the veil, you will have made the world a better place.